welcome everyone. I'm so excited that you're all here with us today. This is just such a special WCS program using mindfulness to seed climate innovation and equity. My name is Glenna Wiseman. I am a WCS board member. I welcome you into this very special virtual room today. Next slide, please. We have a very simple agenda today because we want to keep our focus on the main topic and our fabulous speakers today. So we will have time at the end for Q&A. We'll wrap up and you all can get back to your day at the top of the hour. Next slide, please. WCS fosters an influential network of professionals to further the roles of women in the growing green economy and making a positive impact on the environment. If in the 10th year of WCS, you are not part of this vibrant community, then this is your call to action to get involved. The next 10 years on the planet is incredibly important that we make major strides in very big issues, and don't do it alone. Come join us. Next slide, please. All right, by now we all have deep expertise in creating virtual rooms. So this is really a reminder to have your video on, share your LinkedIn link if you would like to connect. Tell us where you're zooming in from. We have people all over the planet that are members of our community. So you've got that chat function, you know where it is. Tell us where you're zooming in from. And if along the way that you see, we've got Colorado in the house. I know we have the East Coast, we have Florida. Share where you're from, let us know. Oh, thank you. Great to see you from Canada. Awesome. Long Island, Kansas City. Are there people there too? Ukraine? Awesome. See, we're all here and we're all in this fabulous virtual space. And I'm so excited that you're here with us. Excellent. And then if you have mindfulness resources that you would like to share throughout, please put them in the chat. And you know, you all know the drill. If you have a question, put it in the chat, because I think we're going to have lots of fabulous questions. So next slide, please. Okay, my name is Glenna Wiseman. I've been in the clean energy space as a Marcom leader for about 20 years. I've also studied human consciousness and awareness for 30 years. And so, of which mindfulness is a part. And so I cannot tell you how happy my heart is to bring these two threads together in my life in this event today. And I just want to thank you for being here with us. Also, a big thank you to Microsoft for their amazing sustainability efforts that they're doing on the planet, and also for being an enterprise level supporter for WCS. Next slide, please. Okay, you're probably not getting my enthusiasm. So, you know, I'll perk it up a little bit, ladies and gentlemen, come on. I could not be more honored today to introduce you to Rhonda Magee and Lauren Lambrecht. Rhonda V. Magee is a leading thought and practice innovator in mindfulness-based antiracism and social justice. She's a professor of law at the University of San Francisco and the author of the award-winning book, The Inner Work of Racial Justice, Healing Ourselves and Transforming Our Communities Through Mindfulness. I highly recommend the book. Rhonda's putting it up there. We're going to put links in the chat for it. I highly recommend it. Lauren Lambrecht is a senior business manager at Microsoft who brings more than 20 years of experience helping individuals and organizations reach their greatest potential. She is also the founder and lead coach of Verb Leadership, where she focuses on creativity-based coaching to support clients going through major life transitions. I have to also say I met Lauren through the Inner MBA program, which is very exciting. All right, so we're going to pull down the slides. Yay, there you all are. Wave, say hello. Come on, let's have some energy in the room. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
That is perfect.
Feel free to unmute. Can you, everybody? Is that all right? Folks can unmute and say hello real quick.
Yeah, let's unmute and say hello.
Let's make noise.
Hello, everybody. Just chime in. Hello.
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 Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Excellent. All right.
Beautiful.
So what we're going to do is Rhonda and Lauren are going to give us a little bit more perspective on their backgrounds as it relates to mindfulness in this context. And then you all are in for a major treat, because then Rhonda is going to lead us in a brief mindfulness practice. So you actually can get the chance to relax, be in the space, and feel what this is all about. So, Lauren, please.
Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here and delighted to say thank you from Microsoft for gathering and having us here and letting us be a sponsor of this awesome organization. So I, as Rhonda said, or I'm sorry, as Glenna said, I'm a HR business manager at Microsoft, and I celebrated my 1 year.
Come back, Lauren.
HR business manager, just in general, I identify as a coach and a creative, and I really try to infuse that into all aspects of my work and my life. And so I do that regardless of role. So while at Microsoft, I am, doing this business management and operations and such, and looking at team performance and effectiveness, I always try to do that with curiosity and empathy and creativity. And so I'm really fortunate that I got exposed to coaching and social entrepreneurship pretty early in my career, and that has put me on a path towards being a socially conscious leader. And so I applaud all the work that you are all doing in your endeavors as socially conscious leaders as well. And I'm really glad to be here with you today to talk about mindfulness and how it's influenced my journey along the way.
Thank you, Lauren. Rhonda?
Wow, it is really such an honor and a joy to be here with my dear Lauren, with whom I'm really privileged to be joining really for the first time working together. And it's really just a delight to meet you, Lauren, and to hear more about your work. And I'm looking forward to more. And it's such a great delight to be with all of you. So I teach law. That's been my main job for the last 22 years. Before that, I was a lawyer, doing corporate litigation and the like here in San Francisco. And I've been teaching at the University of San Francisco. Many years ago, I started to bring mindfulness meditation into how I teach law and how I support lawyers. And so I've been part of this movement to bring mindfulness off the cushion into our lives. And I'm so grateful to be connecting with you all today. Really to have us create this community of learning and practice together, where we might explore the deep, the hard, the good, rich questions, but with the support of each other, as we look at the intersection between mindfulness and navigating a world in which climate change is real, and there are real opportunities for all of us in figuring out how better to thrive despite the challenges that we face. So let's just see if we can pause together, center on our, really what brought us here, what brought you here. Take a moment to recall exactly what it was in the invitation to be a part of this community, to come to this particular session, highlighting your own deepest aspirations and values as a ground for our time together. And as my dear Glenna, and thank you so much, Glenna, as well, for pulling us all together. I feel honored to be working with you as well. Glenna mentioned that I would offer a formal meditation, and really this will be just a short taste of meditation to support us. By meditation, I mean mindfulness-based meditation. By the way, how many of you have your own kind of meditation practice already? If you're willing to show, by show of hands, and those of you, by the way, who are not showing your visuals, no judgment there, but if you can show your visuals, beautiful, it's good to see your beautiful faces, and get the energy of that. But so I'm seeing even, right, the hands that are shown, even though your faces may not be there, and the thumbs up. So many of us have some experience. Hello, beautiful people. Hello. Many of us have some experience with mindfulness. Maybe we've done it on our own. Maybe we've done it in groups. Maybe we've already done it on Zoom together. But this is our first convening as a group. This unrepeatable moment is giving us an opportunity to explore mindfulness as a support for the difficulties of our engagement in problem solving at this time. So what I'd like to do then is just offer just an example of the kind of practice that I've been offering for more than 15 years now to lawyers and leaders. And I'll ring the bell. And I'd like to invite you to allow the sound of the bell to support you. Taking a moment to put aside any extra devices beyond the device we need to be in connection, putting aside and creating a kind of permission to be present here, to be fully present in this conversation. And for these few moments, to be fully present in your body right here, right now, as a moment to restore. So ring the bell and allow yourself to listen until you can't hear that sound anymore, and then drop into the silence beneath it. So now allowing the sound of my voice, if you're willing, to support you in just continuing this practice of dropping into the silence, by which I simply mean to allow a focusing in on the sensations of being present in this moment, noting the points of contact between the body and the chair or the floor that is supporting you right now. So it may be noticing the body on the cushion in the chair or the position of the feet on the floor. Bringing your attention to these gentle points of contact by which we are feeling, if we're able to allow ourselves, the support of the ground beneath us. This being a moment of reminding ourselves that we are being supported, held, we call it gravity, on this good earth, each of us, wherever we happen to be, and yet at the same time being supported by this beautiful planet in every moment of our lives. So as you breathe in and out, perhaps allowing a focus on the sensations of breathing, picking up on the in-breath or the out-breath, wherever you happen to find yourself right now. And just allowing yourself to calm the mind just for the next few moments by following the in-breath and the out-breath gently, lovingly, with appreciation. The way in which the breath itself is a constant reminder of the life that flows within us, between us, that we are privileged to share in this moment. And if, as you pause, you notice any challenging emotions coming up, or if you notice thoughts really racing, the invitation is to gently just notice that, and with kind of a loving, kind appreciation that that's just how it is right now for you. You're feeling the emotion of anxiety, or you're feeling fatigue in the body. Simply coming back home to the body with this sort of welcome, kind appreciation for just what it's like for you right here, right now. No judgment. As you breathe in and out, and invite this moment of deeper intimacy with your experience right here, right now. Bringing love and kindness to your own experience. And from this place, as we begin to draw this meditation to a close, the invitation might be to see if we might extend the sense of noticing what is well within us, breathing in and breathing out, expanding the sense of well-being throughout the body, and from ourselves to one another, to all that are gathered here in this call, and beyond, to the communities whose lives we touch in our work, whose lives we touch through our families, through our ancestors, and beyond, whose lives we may touch in the future. So as we breathe in and out, rest in the sense of our interconnectedness and in the power that we have to make a difference from right here, right now. Thank you all for joining me in that moment of practice. And if there's a word or a phrase that reflects what's alive in you right now, feel free, if you're willing, to go ahead and put it in the chat. And then I want to turn it over to maybe Glenna to begin us with our Q&A.
So I just invite you to put your hand on your heart and just send yourself a little self-compassion right now. Thank you, Rhonda, for that beautiful demonstration of why would we combine mindfulness with a theme around climate, innovation, equity, and personal resiliency. Because we can't solve the problems at the level of the problem. And the intractable challenges that we face as humans start with us, and we need new solutions. So I'm going to start off with just a quick moment. So we have some kind of basic questions that we're going to start with, and then we invite you to share questions in the chat. For me, mindfulness is not religious. It's not gender specific or culturally specific. There are lots of ways to practice mindfulness, so it's an amazing tool that you can use in any way that you need. There are many problems and challenges on the planet that it is being used to uplift, from the treatment of PTSD and addiction to cultural issues and personal contentment and beyond. And that part of my brain that really loves science and quantum physics, there's a growing body of scientific research that is demonstrating the health and mental benefits of mindfulness. So let's start with, and let's hear from Lauren and Rhonda about what they, how they define mindfulness, and what do they see as the personal, what they see as benefits, and then we'll get into some of our other core topics that we want to. Lauren, would you like to start us out with this?
Sure. I really, really loved what you said earlier, Rhonda, about bringing mindfulness off the cushion. That was exactly it, right? Because I think that there's such a bias or like a assumption that it has to look this one way. And if we hold it in that way that it's supposed to look or that other people do, then we don't get to benefit from it. And we certainly have a harder time bringing it into the workplace because it seems like it could be so separate when you look at it as being so spiritual, or when you look at it as being for yogis, or when you look at it, you know, from some of these stereotypical, let's just say, perspectives, right? But when you can bring mindfulness into the workplace, you can change so much. You can change so much. So for me, it does start with self. And I think that self-leadership is the beginning of massive change in organizations, in your own life, and in the world, right? So for me, mindfulness comes down to, how do I self-manage? How do I self-care for myself? How do I control all the things, not control, but how do I monitor all the things that are going on in my mind so that I can ground, I can slow down, and I can get really clear about what's actually important, right? Clear out the distraction, clear out the noise, and get down to the work that's at hand. And so for me, mindfulness has allowed me to connect back to myself. And when I connect to myself, I'm really clear about what I want to deliver and produce in the world, and to be more aligned in the way that I'm doing that. Mm-hmm. And then there's this whole other element too, where mindfulness for me helped me with my health, right? Once I started practicing and got really into it, I stopped stress eating, for example. Nobody else on the call does that, I know. But I stopped stress eating and I just lost 20 pounds, just magic, right? Because I was working on the things that were causing me to do that sort of stressful eating and have those sort of bad behaviors. And so I think that there's just a lot of benefits that mindfulness can bring to the individual. And then again, when that individual is whole, then they can bring that to the organization and start to make change within the organization. Now, if you can get the organization being mindful together, I mean, watch out. That's when things really start to happen. And so I'll talk a little bit later about some of the sneaky ways that I've been bringing in mindfulness, and that I've seen some of my peers doing that. But it's really amazing to see just kind of that grassroots effort of individuals taking on the practice of mindfulness and talking about it, and not just kind of being in the closet around their mindfulness practice, but sharing it, and how that sort of created momentum across our organization.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, my dear Lauren. It's inspiring to hear how these practices that we call mindfulness, and you as well, my dear Glenna, these practices that we call mindfulness are just, available to any one of us, and, so readily and beautifully adaptable to support us wherever we are. So for me, mindfulness encompasses, I like to think of two different ways I define mindfulness. One is to kind of really focus on the kind of particular practices that we can rely on to deepen our ability to be present in the ways that Lauren described. Be present in a way that invites remembering of our deepest values. It's sort of like we did at the beginning of our time together, right? At the beginning of my meditation. What brought you here? What is it that inspires you? So being present in a way that reconnects us to our highest and best. Being present with a certain kind of kindness. You also probably heard that also in my offering. A kindness, a kind of a friendly openness, you might say. Sometimes we use the phrase non-judgmental here. Sometimes we use the phrase curiosity here. All of these different dimensions, if you will, of what we might call kind of just kind openness to what it is. So it's being present on purpose as well, right? It's like saying to ourselves, it's important to me that I develop the capacity to be present with kindness and openness, in touch with my values. And so research and other millennia of practice have confirmed that being intentional about doing this can deepen our ability to have access to these skills when we need them in the hustle bustle challenges of our lives. So being present on purpose with this kind of friendly, open curiosity to what is, long enough anyway, right, to understand and be more in touch with our power. In other words, we're not saying that we're just going to be present with what is and never make a judgment, never act, right? I'm a law professor. This is engaged mindfulness, right? So the idea then is to identify ways of cultivating within ourselves a deeper way of being in relationship to all aspects of our lives, including those which empower us. And so those practices and then that way of being that can, sort of manifest as we engage in these practices. So intentional practices, more formal practices, but then that kind of informal way of pausing when we're listening to another person, of knowing the importance of taking a moment to take a deep breath before we get on that phone call or send that email. So there's all of these ways that we move the formal practices on the cushion into the informal engagement of everyday life. And one acronym that I like to remind people of, those of us in the mindfulness teaching community have benefited from this acronym and shared it widely, but I like to drop it into these conversations, is the RAIN acronym, to summarize what it is that mindfulness supports us in doing. So R, for recognize what's happening. Oh, I'm feeling anxiety because of this latest report on the threat of war somewhere, or the threat of what's happening in my neighborhood as a result of climate change. Recognize, right? Pause. Oh, this is what anxiety feels like. A, so R, it's R-A-I-N, RAIN. Recognize. A, accept. Again, just for the moment. Oh yeah, I'm feeling anxious. That is the truth. I don't have to run away from that. I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling overwhelmed, right? So R, recognize. A, accept for the moment what the body is telling us, right? And that leads us to the I, R-A-I, investigate. So by investigate, we observe thoughts, emotions, sensations. Oh, I'm feeling anxious, and this is a thought that's coming up maybe before the anxiety or traveling with it. Or I'm feeling anxious. How do I feel that in my body? Where exactly? Oh, my heart's racing a little bit. I'm running when I need to just rest. I'm trying to work when I need to sleep, right? So R-A-I, investigate what's happening. Thoughts, emotions, sensations, and maybe further, learn what's happening in the world that's impacting us. So studying, communicating with each other, investigating by talking to each other, people whose lives are different from ours. So that I is so rich, because it's the way in which we might deepen our understanding from this place of pausing. And then N, R-A-I-N, to commit to doing all of that with a spirit of nurturing, caring for ourselves and others, with a spirit of non-attachment, right? We're not seizing onto whatever moment we're having as if it's the full truth, because we know from mindfulness that everything is changing. And that, the thoughts that we're having are not the whole. They're just what's occurring right now. So we're deepening the capacity to do all of this with equanimity and with kindness. So thank you all for letting me share that much, and I'd love to hear any questions that are coming up or reflections.
So one of our topics here today is climate innovation. Tackling creativity in the workplace, creativity that will help us get to more answers, more ways of dealing things, and solving some of these problems together as communities. So, Lauren, you mentioned a minute ago that how you're doing it in the things that you're sneaking into the workplace. So maybe talk to us a little bit about how you're using these tools in the workplace environment, and how you see creativity enhance through mindfulness that could help us with this some of these climate tech innovations?
Yeah, sure. I can definitely talk a little bit more about the innovation part and then some of the just little ways of integrating it into just the way that we talk at work. So as far as integration, I definitely can see, like I mentioned before, mindfulness is that way of clearing your mind, centering, and getting yourself ready to have the conversation. But then in terms of like innovation, for me, outside of mindfulness, I've been looking at design thinking. So design thinking and coaching, and I'm hoping that many of you are familiar with the concepts of design thinking or human-centered design. But a lot of that has to do with inviting empathy, curiosity, compassion in your problem solving. What's in it for the end user? We don't just create things just because we can, but like, what is it that the end user is actually going to benefit from as a result of having this product or this service alive in the world? And so when you think about that, curiosity, empathy, and compassion, those are totally mindfulness-based, ideas, right? And so I think maybe that's why I was drawn to design thinking, because it has a lot of these concepts from coaching where you're really paying attention and asking questions and really trying to understand who you're working with and what their real needs are and helping them to elevate and solve that problem through asking great questions. But then it has this really thoughtful and compassionate side behind it. And so I think all those things can really spur us in our innovation if we're paying attention to them and putting ourselves in somebody else's shoes, walking a mile in someone else's shoes and experience, and connecting and relating to them in that way. So that's my thoughts on just the innovation piece. And then in terms of just bringing it into the workplace, right? It's really the relationship building that you're doing with an individual or with your team, taking the time to get to know them, taking the time to understand what motivates them and what are they in it for. And so you can connect on that heart level instead of just trying to solve the problem all the time, but really get underneath the problem and also get underneath the worldview of the people who are also trying to solve the problem together, right? And so if you want to even step back from that a little bit more, how do you do that? You have to, again, have that relationship. And so sharing in something like mindfulness, like, I'll give an example, right? In our company, it's not unusual, and I'm sure you might have experienced this too, back-to-back meetings all day long, right? Back to back to back. And just the pace of life can be really, really hard at work, especially. And so to pause, when I'm in charge of a meeting, I can take the responsibility. If I'm running that agenda, I can take the responsibility to say, for the first 5 minutes, we're not doing business, right? We're not even doing relationship building. We're just getting here, right? Is there anything that you need to say to just like leave it behind so that you don't bring it into the meeting? Are you frustrated about something? Are you excited about something that's distracting you because you can't wait for it? That was just me all morning long waiting for this call, right? I had to tell everybody. So just being able to air it and put it out there and just, okay, I've said it and now I can move on and I can be present in this meeting. And I think that just bringing that level of awareness, like, oh, right, I am distracted, and being mindful and self-aware. If I'm distracted or if I'm not paying attention fully, I can't fully contribute to solving this problem. So how can I, as a leader, create a space where everybody can be present, right? And so we try to model that as much as possible. And then also just in meetings to have space, open space, to just, again, pause, reflect, and maybe do a centering exercise. Maybe it's something like in our holiday party, for example. I led our holiday party and I snuck in a gratitude meditation right there in the middle of the holiday party. And it flowed and it made sense, but I had to be mindful of thinking that this could be something beneficial to folks, right? So just looking for those little moments, and it doesn't have to be long, and it doesn't have to be like I was talking about the stereotypical way of doing things. Another thing I did was in a team meeting, we did a painting exercise, right? As a way to bring each other together and to do something else other than just the work, but it ended up creating connection and allowing people to be with their paints. You'll see if you go to my website that I'm all about creative mindfulness, which is a thing. So it's just another way of meditating to me. So just being creative and looking for new ways to get people, switching between left brain and right brain, trying new things, getting out of their comfort zones can be a really nice way to integrate into the workplace and innovate through doing so.
We just take ourselves wherever we go, don't we, ladies? I mean, we
Indeed.
just, we,
You never
and
know.
if we can use these tools to show up more fully, then we can help make change happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Rhonda, could you talk to us? We all know that racial equity is really a big part of the climate goals. And we could not, I mean, we have to have you speak to this book. Can you see it? Oh, you're not gonna be able to see it because I have the virtual screen up. Okay, well, I'm going to post it on there. There, thank you. So tell us a little about your work and how you envision and how it is already helping us create a more equitable scenario, climate-wise and other, just in society in general. I know it's a big question, but please.
Oh, but thank you so much. I think we've already actually, in a certain sense, been experiencing some of that. My work has been about integrating mindfulness practices in all of the beautiful ways that Lauren has described, right? I was innovating and stealthily bringing mindfulness into my law school environment, 15 years ago, and just in the ways you're describing, Lauren. Bringing in gratitude practices, helping our students see the value of relationships as teachers. Not only, right, that sage on the stage, myself as a law professor, but having them value each other as members of this kind of teaching, learning, practice community. Bringing creativity. I'm the one who will be, known to sing in the middle of a presentation every once in a while, or invite movement. So all of these things. But for me, I'm drawn to these practices, obviously, not only for myself, but in recognition of the fact that life is precious and fleeting, and certainly there is kind of a fair amount of undue suffering happening. And so for me, mindfulness is a way of not only connecting with my own life force and capacities for self-mastery and innovation and collaboration, which is really important in the world right now. But it really is coming out of a place of recognizing with awe, in a way, the preciousness of our lives, and having a kind of compassionate understanding that we all have this quality of preciousness in our lives. And therefore, our ability to work together in ways that maximize the capacity for all of us to thrive is really, really important, and something that's not easy to do in times of change and challenge, right? So our history around race and racism, we have a particular history in the United States that we look at, but the invitation of my work is to invite this question: how is it that different social bodies, like different notions of who belongs and who doesn't belong in our social world, wherever we are part of what we're up against? And we try to make the world more sustainable for all of us. How is it that certain bodies, certain people, certain communities can be often unintentionally, but nevertheless effectively excluded from the reach of our care and concern, from the reach of our the projects that we're engaged in? So for me, mindfulness certainly, right? Because mindfulness is really just about shining the light of awareness on any aspect of our experience. And so, of course, that means we can shine it on these questions of who belongs and who doesn't. How do we include folks more intentionally in the scope and reach of our compassion and our engagement? It can shine the light on those things that make us uncomfortable about the messages we imbibe in our culture, the things we were trained into, often we didn't ask for these trainings, but we often raised in a culture where, by virtue of the jokes that were made about other people, by virtue of whose histories we learned and whose we didn't. By virtue of the communities we lived in, which were in prior generations, in often cases, constructed around separations of certain types of people and a hierarchy of values. Bringing mindfulness to those aspects of our social experience has been my work, and actually my book has been intentionally created as a kind of a doorway into deeper mindfulness, sort of an introduction to mindfulness practice is part of the book, but an introduction to it as a support for really robust social engagement, including really examining social biases and the intersection between race, gender, class, all the other isms and schisms that can get in the way of us seeing each other rightly, that can get in the way of us caring for each other rightly. And, so I wrote the book, but then also read the audiobook, because there are lots of meditations in the book, and, reading it in this way is one way, but actually listening is a way that many of my, the readers who found the book have told me they've been benefited by it. And the last thing I'll say is, in terms of a deep value of, like, I often, when you hear of mindfulness, it's not always, the link between mindfulness and compassion and empathy are not always underscored. In fact, sometimes we think of mindfulness as somehow needing a separate dose or a separate practice around compassion. But actually, to me, mindfulness is grounded in this sort of knowing that we suffer and knowing that there are things we can do to minimize it, to help ourselves heal. And from that place, recognizing that we're not alone in that. Everybody's suffering in different ways, and we can help each other heal and then thrive. And so one of my readers said, "There's so much compassion in your book. It seems like there's a lot." And so she did a search because she was reading it on Kindle. And she's like, "Oh my God, it turned out there's like, you use the word compassion over 700 times, which is a little embarrassing. It's just a 300-page book, which means I'm using it more than twice per page. Compassion or some variation. Why? Because I do think that's really of what we need to figure out how to address these problems in different ways when we know that we're all tempted to be afraid of change, to be afraid of the kind of way in which our sense of ourselves is secure and stable, our sense of our community is protected, is somewhat threatened by, let's say, globalization, demographic change, new economy. We're all struggling to kind of find our way, to feel a little bit of groundedness. And under those circumstances, we can be, and we see it around us if we're looking, right? We see people being tempted to, scapegoat other people, blame other people, kind of draw a line of who belongs and who doesn't. So how we navigate this world without doing that, centering on love, centering on possibility, to me, this is really important. And for me, mindfulness is a perfect companion to all of the ways that we might do that more effectively. The mindfulness and compassionate understanding that we're all suffering, and there are ways that we can innovate around the social dimension of really making change together.
Glenna, I don't know if you're going here in what you're thinking, but I just completed the module on self-compassion in our inner MBA class. And if you haven't heard of the inner MBA, check it out. It's kind of mind-blowing. But two things I got out of it is that you can't have compassion without self-compassion, right? And it kind of has to start with self and being kind to yourself. Like, treat yourself like you treat your best friend. You wouldn't say such negative things that you say to yourself, to your best friend. Like, be your own best friend, right? And treat yourself with kindness, treat yourself with goodness. And the other thing that I took away around this kind of conversation around kindness too, is there's ways to be kind without self-sacrificing, not without giving away too much of yourself, without being a martyr. You can be kind and compassionate without putting yourself down or putting yourself lower, right? And I just think it's so important to remember, again, to that place of self-care and leadership as beginning with self-care. How can you be compassionate to yourself and be kind to yourself and give yourself grace, be excessively graceful with yourself as you're going through the challenges and these really hard things that we're up to in this world and in this work that we're doing. You have to be gentle with yourself because it's hard. You have to give yourself that downtime to rejuvenate and to restore, and then to also be able to be your best and put your best self forward when you're, again, trying to change the world. You kind of have to be full. You have to have that cup full in order to be able to give so much as you do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Grace, you know, as a teacher, the acronym. So I have a practice around the acronym for GRACE.
Oh, good. I want to hear.
Yeah, because again, I totally agree, right? Excessively graceful. I love that. With ourselves and with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So G, first of all, gather our intentions. Because why is it that we sometimes aren't graceful? We're distracted. We're overwhelmed. We're racing, right, into the next fire that we have to put out.
Mm-hmm.
So if you notice that in ourselves, our mindfulness practice helps us. Are we racing? Do we need to like notice that we're kind of being a little bit manic, and that energy is not necessarily helpful. So mindfulness can help us notice when we need to pause, right? Like Lauren, I often offer this pause and write about it in the book as a core practice. So pause, and then the first initial of the GRACE practice, G, gather your intention. Take a deep breath. Bring your attention, right, back to this place of presence. R, right, reconsider your intentions for this moment. So G, gather your attention. R, reconsider your intentions for this moment. What do I want to do the next half hour? What do I want to do the next half day? Being focused.
Mm-hmm.
A, attuning to yourself. This is where we bring in that love and that kindness. Attune, bringing that grace right into ourselves. And then from that place, attune to what other people need. Is somebody else feeling overwhelmed and responding to me from that place? Is somebody else angry based on something that's happened, or just feeling despair? Just bringing that attunement into the C, right? Consider what then would serve. Based on what you're noticing in yourself, what you're noticing in the other person, what's happening in the environment, considering what would serve. And so E, then, from that place of having gathered your attention, reconsidered your intention, attuned, then considering what would serve with compassion, I would add, so that extra C. Then E, engage, and then N. You've done the best you could for now. We've done the best we could for today. We can rest at the end of the day. We can pause, look with gratitude at the 1, 2, or 3 things that we were able to accomplish, and then let it go. Because restoring is perhaps, as Thich Nhat Hanh, may he rest in peace, he passed this past week, one of his teachings, sleep is the most effective meditation. So let's take care of our ability to sleep by recognizing at the end of the day what we have done to make the best of the moments that we have. We're not perfect, and we can begin again tomorrow. But in the middle, we need the rest. Okay.
That's great.
Self-compassion, I was so struck, Lauren, by the self-compassion module in the Inner MBA that I wrote, I have a creative passion project called Permission to Bloom, and I wrote a piece last week about self-compassion. And it just, that is something that we, particularly as women, have a really hard time with. And I think that is something that is really an important part of this mindfulness work, to be mindful of how we treat ourselves and then bring that into the work that we're doing in the world, because that really does reverberate out. Serena, I want to check in with you. Do we have maybe a couple of questions that you can let us know that came from the chat?
Yeah, thanks, Glenna. I think Erica had a really great question. Erica, not sure if you want to go off of mute and ask it, otherwise I can read it.
Sure. Thank you so much for this wonderful group meditation and meeting. It's been so lovely. Okay, back to my question. When we're bringing mindfulness into our workplace, what are techniques for us to send it up? How can we introduce mindfulness, compassion, make that create space for creativity among our senior leaders?
I'll take a first pass at it if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, Erica, it makes complete sense to want to go to the top. And one thing I learned, because I would have gone that exact same direction, but one thing that I learned from witnessing what's been going on in the mindful growth community at Microsoft is it's completely grassroots. It's not sponsored by HR. It's not sponsored by leadership. It truly is one individual who was really passionate about it, inviting 30 other people who were passionate about it to take part. And this was in 2017. And now in 2021, over 300 people have gone through the curriculum, the grassroots employee-led curriculum. And there's 1,600 people in the mindful growth community, right? Again, no HR sponsorship, no leadership sponsorship. However, I bet I can attest that leaders are showing up in our community meetings, on the community board, in the weekly sessions, right? I see my leaders right there with me in these same kind of conversations, right? So there is some power to just getting it going and having the leadership see what's happening and seeing the changes that are maybe coming up, and encouraging people in the community to share out within their small groups or share out with their manager what their experience has been. And then I think I said a little bit earlier something around like, you have to talk about it, right? So if you are somebody who is attuned to mindfulness and is bringing it into your life, tell people, right? And make it present and show them, or tell and show how your experience is shaping the way that you're able to show up at work, and any shifts that you've had. Bring it into your development conversations, right? And I think that sort of starts planting seeds with leaders around either A, I should try this myself, or B, if it's working so well for Erica, maybe it's something that we can do as a team. Maybe Erica can lead it for us, right? And I think that there's just, I was really surprised when I was coaching, like group coaching a small group of leaders, and we talked about self-care, and it came up like 3 out of the 5 had a mindfulness practice, and everybody was astounded. Like, wait, you do it too, right? It shouldn't be a secret. We should talk about it. Put it out there. So I think those would be a couple of my thoughts. I don't think it directly answers your question, but it's a different perspective on what I think you're trying to get to.
Excellent. And Rhonda, a quick answer, because then we've got to wrap up, because we're almost out of time. Can you believe it?
We do. And I really absolutely just co-sign, +1 to absolutely everything Lauren said. It sounds very similar to what we did at the University of San Francisco, where a grassroots effort started by me being frustrated and feeling like maybe I ought to quit my job because this right here isn't working. And this isn't a place where I can bring, my whole self. I had already left law practice into law teaching, gotten tenure, and I was like, if I can't talk about what I think is really most important to resolving conflict in the inner dimension, then maybe I need to go to seminary or become a full-time mindfulness teacher or something. And I talked to a leader who said, you're not the only one having these problems or having these views that law needs to change. Find your familiars in this organization and make a change, right? So the leader basically gave me permission to find others who were interested in these things, and we did. So we too started from the bottom up and created new courses and created drop-in opportunities and created a kind of a movement at our university too. So in closing, I just want to, if I may, Glenna, maybe offer, and I don't know if you want to say, maybe have some few words before I offer a closing meditation.
Well, let me run through let people know where they can get more of more WCS, and absolutely, yes, that would be fabulous if you would bring us to the next level of this. That would be wonderful. So Alyssa, if we can pull up the slides. I knew this would happen. I knew we'd be in the cusp of this and want more. So ladies and gentlemen, you can all take this into your communities and into your workplaces, and do as Lauren and Rhonda are advising you to start grassroots movements. Please make sure that you check out the upcoming WCS events on addressing the burden of air pollution, and one very close to my heart, averting a solar and storage waste crisis. These are events that are coming up. Next slide. Virtual membership, yes, of course. Please join us. Next slide. A thank you to all the volunteers for today, because this is a volunteer organization and there's lots of room to be involved. So thank you all for your support here. And finally, join us online. You can find us everywhere online. So please be sure to do that. Next slide. Perfect. All the places where you normally hang out online, we're there. So check us out there. So let's pull the slides down. I want to thank Lauren and Rhonda for their time and invite Rhonda to help us move back into the rest of our day, empowered by this moment. Please, Rhonda.
Thank you very, very much, my dear Lauren. Deep thanks, deep gratitude for this moment with you and my dear Glenna, and absolutely all of you. Absolutely, this moment is what it is because you are here. Your presence has mattered. So pausing, taking a few moments to once again be regenerated, be restored by the connection between the body and the earth right now, as represented by this conscious breath. Breathing in, feeling a sense of connectedness to the earth, as we breathe out, feeling our contributions to well-being. Breathing in, sensing what is well within you. Breathing out, a wish to extend what is well within you to those around you whose lives will be affected by your energy today and beyond. And with deep gratitude for all of you, for all that you are and all you're doing, remembering that this work that we do for mindfulness is so important. The ways we've been thinking about each other, our relationship to each other, who we are, the identities we are, has led us to a point where we really need new ways of re-envisioning who we are in relationship to each other and the planet. So may these practices be of benefit in that, in ways sacred work. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Blessings all. Go out and do good work, starting with yourself.
Thanks, everybody. If you would be